Yes, Conor, thanks. I've taken approximately 15. Listen, this is the 8th budget since I came in here, and I suppose they have one thing in common, in that they are very similar, and none of them are very inspiring. But very little has changed in how budgets are done in those 8 years that I can remember. I heard some people saying today that this was an election budget. Well, I actually don't think so. I mean, after listening to Fianna Fáil kissing Pascal's feet, I'd be very surprised if this marriage made in heaven doesn't continue for another while. Now, the Minister told us today that most importantly, this is a caring budget. Well, I suppose you'd have to wonder, caring for who? Now, Wexford, I come from an area of the country that's one of the most underprivileged. Our unemployment rate is around 14% still. We've huge challenges around mental health and all the other social problems that go with it. And I was actually amused to hear Pascal say today that there was 587 million to be invested in the ports in Ireland of Dublin, Cork and Shannon Fines to enhance national and international connectivity. And he also told us that these are bulletproof ready for Brexit. Well, I mean, have you heard of a place called Rosslare? Because there's actually a port down there, and it's the nearest port to Europe. Now, after the Brexit vote back in 2016, there was a study set up called the Irish Maritime Development Office's study. And it was to look at the use of the UK land bridge. The purpose of the report was to establish the volume of traffic using the UK land bridge at present, the potential consequences that Brexit will have on land bridge usage, and the various alternative options that may be viable. 2.5 years later, still no report. I mean, do you just give a damn? Come on. Rosslare, it would be such a lift if there was actually state investment there. You're happy for Irish Rail still to own the place and just bleed it of the profits every year. There's been no investment in it for years, there hasn't. And it could make a big difference to Wexford. But I don't see any appetite or interest. I mean, when you see a deprived area like Wexford, why was there nothing in the budget today to target areas that need help? Because Wexford is one of them. It's not the only one. I mean, we're in the top 3 with Donegal and Longford in terms of deprivation. But we don't see proactive government action to address the problems in these places. Now, I heard Pascal say today that this government is fully committed to supporting the sustainable development of Ireland through the Department of Rural and Community Development. Well, you know what? I'm actually getting tired of hearing in here that you really care about rural Ireland. It's wearing a bit thin, right? Because anyone that comes from outside of Dublin, in this country, any of the TDs, they all know that the towns and villages in Ireland, a lot of them are dying, and they need help. They need a different government approach. I've mentioned it before, right? There's a small village in south of Wexford called Duncannon. They've been on to me for a couple of years about a footpath that they want, 300 metres long, to go from the playground into the village. And it also connects a housing estate where there's 56 houses. It's really dangerous. If you have one person walking along the road and 2 cars meet, one of the cars will have to stop for fear that they'd hit the person. But when it's put to the local authority, why won't they do it? They tell you honestly that they don't have the money. Well, I mean, given that the local authorities are totally dependent on central government for money, if you actually care about rural Ireland, why aren't you giving money to these things? Because you are not giving enough. Oh, look at, I mean, any notion that the budget is actually connected to the reality of people's lives, to me, was actually well pointed out by Pascal. What I'm talking about is the lack of, the disconnect between these buildings and real Ireland, and the lack of reality in the budget, right? I mean, he actually said today, this government and the Irish people will not be found wanting in addressing some of the major humanitarian crises and development challenges our planet faces today. give me a break. I mean, let's just mention the word Saudi and Yemen and Shannon. We're worried about the humanitarian crisis in the world today. We have tea with the Saudis and the UAE crowd, and we don't, and we're grand with it. The worst humanitarian crisis on the planet today is in Yemen. They're starving the people out of it. That's their latest tactic. They're starving them out of it. Most of the bombs have hit non-military targets from the start in Yemen. Now they're bombing crops and animals to reduce their food. They've blocked the port of Hudaydah, where most of the food comes in. It's ridiculous. And we say we care about the rest of the planet, and we still allow Shannon to be used by the US military to go ahead and bomb the living daylights of anything they want to. I mean, listen, climate change. Right, I mean, the report of the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was released the other day, and it was damning, right? According to the 28th Climate Change Performance Index, Ireland is the worst performing European country. Our carbon emissions are a shocking 60% higher than the EU average. And what's in the budget today about climate change? It's a lot of nonsense. Taoiseach said in August that if we are going to meet our climate change obligations, then we will have to grasp the nettle in increasing the carbon tax. Now, maybe you have another budget coming up next week, and we're going to see climate change dealt with, right? But I mean, we haven't seen anything yet. There was nothing in it today. The budget talks about using compressed natural gas in our vehicles as an environmentally friendly alternative to diesel. The idea that natural gas is in any way environmentally friendly is a propaganda campaign by the fossil fuel industry. It's not true. We know from numerous studies that the increased use of natural gas in road transport is largely ineffective in reducing greenhouse gases or air pollution. The immediate benefits are small or non-existent, while the environmental costs, societal costs and costs to operators are negative for almost all vehicle categories, in particular large commercial vehicles. Natural gas is a fossil fuel, and as such should be kept in the ground, and instead you're talking about spending money incentivising its extraction and burning it. It's nuts. I mean, there's more money going into the forestry sector, and it would be welcome if this programme was not an environmental disaster. Tree plantations in Ireland are dominated by non-native varieties that require fertilisers and pesticides, and are destined for pulp, fibreboard and paper products, or worse, for generating energy. I mean, we have the second lowest tree cover in Europe, and we should be incentivising farmers to plant a mix of native species that will stay in the ground and achieve long-term carbon lock-up. But we're not doing this. We're just look at housing. Spare me, Lord. The Minister said today, we are working hard to deliver sufficient housing to provide secure and affordable homes for all our people. That's not true. I'm sorry, it's not true. He says, in the rental sector, I'm bringing forward the full removal of the restrictions on the amount of interest that may be deducted by landlords in respect of loans used to purchase, improve or repair their residential property. Right, we're going to subsidise them even more. Do you know, in Germany, they actually subsidise rental properties as well, but on one condition, that they are then rented below market rate. And here, they're off the Richter scale. And we're still going to incentivise them? We've established, Minister says, we have established a 100 million service sites fund to support local authorities in bringing forward lands for subsidised, more affordable housing. I intend to increase the level of this fund to 310 million over 3 years. How long have we been subsidising housing in this country? And now the budget today is bringing in more of it. I don't understand why, since we came in here in 2011, it's nearly 8 years, and you have refused to do what needs to be done around the problems that we have around the supply of housing. You are listening to the wrong people. Now, you might say that, oh, so look what I mean, you're not going to listen to us over here ranting and raving about housing since the cows come home. But I'm sorry, but you are listening to the wrong people. You don't understand the industry. And honestly, yeah, I do, because I spent my life in it. And I can tell you that you are going completely in the wrong direction. You are going the same way as governments for the last 30 or 40 years had done. And introducing a subsidy in this manner to supposedly produce affordable housing is crazy. It's not the way to do it. He's already in here a couple of weeks ago telling us how wonderful the Land Development Agency is. The Land Development Agency, what did the Minister say about it? Oh, here he said today, the Land Development Agency has been established to better coordinate state lands for regeneration and development. I tell you what the Land Development Agency is going to do. And this is MAM and Mark II. That's what it is. It'll coordinate state lands, all right, for developers to provide unaffordable housing. That's what it's going to do. There's no sense to that, like. I mean, my God. You know what? As you know, we're behind a bill here in July to see if it should only address the root cause where it all starts, right? There's two reasons why housing is unaffordable in Ireland, right? Well, there's more, right? But two of the large ones, right, is the price of land, which is crazy, because we don't control it. We don't tax land banking. We incentivise it. We incentivise it. That's problem number one. Number two is that you're not prepared to hire builders to build housing. You're prepared to hire developers who will hire builders to build housing. So the builder and developer, as I keep saying, are two different animals. It just so happened that some builders became developers, like myself, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But now, your average developer now isn't actually a builder. He hires builders. Okay, some of them do, but the big buys are not. So, and they're looking for a serious profit. They're looking for 60 to 80,000 profit a unit. They're looking at, if they have land, they'd like about 100,000 a unit for their land. And if ye actually sorted out the local authorities and made them fit for purpose, and let them hire builders who would actually be very happy to make 10,000 profit a unit, they'd be delighted. Is there paying an extra 100,000 a minimum to allow these big developers to supply your housing for you? And you are not prepared to fix the problem, where you can do it for 100,000 less by doing it, just organising bodies yourselves to do it in connection with the local authorities. I don't understand why you won't do it. And land banking, right? Okay, he's used the Section 43 as an excuse for not taxing land banking. Other countries do it. We say we were following international best practice at times, but we're not. They do it much better in other places, and we're ignoring the good parts about what they do things. I want to read out. There was a guy who said this in 1909, over 100 years ago. He said, roads are made, streets are made, railway services are improved. Electric light turns night into day. Electric trams glide swiftly to and fro. Water is brought from reservoirs 100 miles off in the mountains, and all the while the landlords sit still. Every one of those improvements is affected by the labour at the cost of other people. Many of the most important are affected at the cost of the municipality and of the ratepayers. To not one of those improvements does the land monopolist, as a land monopolist, contribute, and yet by every one of them the value of his land is sensibly enhanced. He renders no service to the community, he contributes nothing to the general welfare, he contributes nothing even to the process from which his own enrichment is derived. The land were occupied by shops or by dwelling, the municipality at least would have secured the rates upon them in the aid of the general fund. But the land may be unoccupied, undeveloped, it may be what's called ripening at the expense of the whole city, of the whole country, for the unearned increment of its owner. Do you know who actually said that? Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill in 1909 said that. Well, you know what? It's 110 years ago, 109 years ago. Maybe you start listening to what Winston Churchill had to say. What is wrong with us? Why don't we? I've said it before in here, right? If you go 25 kilometres, 20 kilometres from the centre of any city in Europe, you get a 3-bed house for 160,000. Any of the cities in mainland Europe, not England, but in mainland Europe. What do you get for here? Our city, our capital city. I tell you what, good luck to you if you can get it for double. Good luck to you, because you'll be under pressure. Why don't we do something about it? 99% of the voters of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil and Labour would benefit from doing this right. From stop subsidising the developers, stop feeding the land bankers. For God's sake, are we ever going to sort this country out? Because this budget is going nowhere towards sorting anything.